I'm Advocate Vaishali Tikle, and on behalf of Shraddha and Suvarna, I welcome you all to this another webinar. Uh, I take this opportunity to introduce today's speaker, Advocate Rajiv Patil, who is a designated senior lawyer in High Court, Bombay High Court. Sir started his practice in 1982. Sir, prior to the law practice, he worked as a freelancer journalist with Marathi newspaper, namely Sakar, Saptahik Dainik, and various other newspapers. Rajiv Patil sir started his law practice from small causes along with his father. Late Lakshman Patil sir, and he got opportunity to work under various eminent personalities like Mr. Justice Vilas V. Kamath sir. So also practiced. Sir was also teaching in law college, KC Law College. Sir conducted very important cases like writ petitions in the matter of GATT agreements, Dunkel proposals, Enron projects, and Tarapur rehabilitation case. He is still conducting Tarapur Power Project rehabilitation case till today for complete rehabilitation of villagers of Port Poprahan and in Palghar district without charging any professional fees. Sir was also an additional public prosecutor. He conducted many important cases like death sentences, and ultimately in 2001 he resigned as an additional public prosecutor. Sir was also a member of Bar Council of Maharashtra and Goa for 2 terms from 2002 till 2009. He was also elected as Vice Chairman of Bar Council for 2 consecutive terms. Sir was unanimously elected as Chairman of Bar Council of Maharashtra and Goa in the year 2008. During his tenure as a chairman of Bar Council of Maharashtra and Goa, there was commendable jobs done by him, as he was a convener of a national summit of the advocates at Mumbai in the year 2005. Sir has also been a member of Maharashtra State Law Commission from the year 2005 till 2010. Sir was also a president of Advocates Association of Western India. As recognition of his contribution in legal field, the Honorable Bombay High Court conferred an honor and designated as senior advocate in the year 2012. We welcome you, sir, and over to you, sir.
Good evening, friends. Very nice to meet you. It's kind of a new experience for me to have a discussion on internet or webinar. Thanks to Advocate Shraddha, Vaishali and Bhavna Jadhav of FCBA. Now, let us go to the subject. Law of writ is a very vast and extensive subject. But let us make it possible to understand within this framework. Not only advocates, but all the people are always curious about the law of writs. Everybody feels that all the problems can be solved by filing writ petition before the High Court or before the Supreme Court. Not only in India, but my experience goes that some of the Americans were very curious about a writ jurisdiction. One Ruth Romer from University of California, UCLA they call it, approached us way back in the year 1990, and she wanted to file a kind of a petition prohibiting cigarette companies to manufacture cigarettes. I was really shocked, and me and my colleagues said it is not possible because there are so many requirements of law. So she said that it's we heard about your writ jurisdiction, which is very vast, and thus people have so many ideas about the writ jurisdiction, and even the advocates feel that they can resolve all their issues before the trial court by filing writ petitions. As some of you are practicing in the family court, you are aware that for many interlocutory orders, you need to approach High Court by way of writ petitions. Only final orders can be challenged by filing family court appeal or appeals or revision. There are also other welfare legislation which do not permit any appeals or revisions. In such an event, there is no option but to approach the writ jurisdiction. There is no other efficacious or effective remedy available. Hence, it is need of the day to discuss law of writs. Though the topic is very vast, I would like to discuss skeleton of it. I won't be discussing the judgments of the High Court and the Supreme Court, because I believe that once you understand the basics of law, you are the best persons to interpret when it is required. When you talk about the writ, the concept is very flexible. Sometimes it is very wide to grant any reliefs under the sky, and sometimes it is very narrow, not even allowing an ant to come in. Court may feel that granting you such relief may open a floodgates for the court. It is a jurisdiction which should be rarely used, that's what they say. It is a jurisdiction which gives ultimate discretion to the court whether to exercise the power or not. I remember another incident when, before the division bench of the Bombay High Court, Justice Rajan Kochar, when he was an advocate, had made a very bold statement. He said, when he was an advocate, that writ jurisdiction is very large and wide when it comes to taxation law. But it becomes a very narrow when it becomes dealing with the issues of industrial law. And that is how the court was taken aback at that point of time. But the fact remains that sometimes it is very wide and sometimes it is very narrow. Academically, there are three ways to approach the writ jurisdiction. One is under Article 32 of the Constitution of India, directly to the Supreme Court where fundamental rights are involved. Secondly, under Article 226 of the Constitution of India, to prefer writ petition before the High Court in its inherent jurisdiction. And thirdly, under Article 227, before the High Court, in its powers of superintendence. This High Court has a power of superintendence over all the courts and tribunals which comes within its territorial jurisdiction. You must be, all of you were law students, and as I was a law student, when you or I was in the law college, we were taught or told that there are four writs. One is the writ of certiorari, another is the writ of mandamus, third is the writ of prohibition, and fourth is writ of quo warranto. One more writ you must have heard is of writ of habeas corpus. I know many of you are more concerned about the writ of habeas corpus, but it will be necessary for all of us to understand the four basic writs. Now, you must understand, and everybody must be knowing about this, that writ is the command by the court to the executive or the government. Writ is extraordinary jurisdiction, or extraordinary remedy for every special case and only against the state within the meaning of Article 12 of the Constitution. The state may include government departments, local authorities, corporations under the statutes, universities, and some whatever comes within the meaning of Article 12. Supreme Court way back in Minerva Mills case widened the jurisdiction of widen the scope of writ jurisdiction. Now you may ask a question, if the writ is so extraordinary or rare jurisdiction, how the High Court entertains various writ petitions. Therefore, I would request all of you to carefully read Article 226 and 227 of the Constitution of India. I am not going to Article 32 because I think that we are presently concerned with the writs before the High Court. First, let us see what is the writ of certiorari. Certiorari is a court process to seek judicial review of a decision of a lower court or administrative agency. Superior Court directs the lower court to send its records for review in its own discretion, so they can consider the proceedings before the lower court. Now, we have to keep it in mind that it's a jurisdiction with a discretion. It should be used rarely. To maintain the judicial discipline, you may say so. The word certiorari comes from Latin law and means, into inverted comma, to be more fully informed. That's what the meaning is. So this is so far as certiorari. Now you understood that when you call for records and proceeding, your prayer A in the writ petition says to call for records and proceeding, what it means. Now let us come to the writ of mandamus. Mandamus, or this writ, is a kind of a command by a court to inferior government official ordering him or her to properly fulfill their official duties or correct an abuse of discretion. It is command to perform the statutory duty. So it can be against the executive or administrative agency, directing them to conduct themselves in a correct manner, in a correct jurisdiction, and pass appropriate orders. Now let us come to writ of prohibition. A writ of prohibition directs subordinates to stop doing something which law prohibits. This writ is many times issued by the superior court to lower court, directing it not to proceed with the case which does not fall under its jurisdiction. So it's a writ of prohibition. I'm just making it very simple by explaining this, because I need not go to the very heavy words to explain the writ jurisdiction. Now let us come to the writ of quo warranto. What is this quo warranto? A legal action requiring a person to show by what warrant, by what authority he is holding such office. The court may ask a question to that person that what is his authority to exercise such jurisdiction, whatever he is doing within his powers. Let us take example, if a person is acting as a quasi-judicial officer and he is not competent to do it, and somebody files a petition challenging his jurisdiction, the court may issue writ of quo warranto, calling upon him to explain under what authority of law or under what warrant he is exercising such jurisdiction. To best of my knowledge, these are the basic writs which are very clear, and we can proceed further. But I would once again repeat myself that if we read Article 226 and 227 of the Constitution of India very carefully and very minutely, which may give us more understanding or more knowledge of law, I would say. You have to read each and every word by heart, and you will be the best person to understand the process of writs. Now, one more writ which you will be very much interested in is the writ of habeas corpus. Habeas corpus is a recourse in law through which a person can report an unlawful detention or imprisonment to a court and request that court order the custodian of that person that what kind of a detention or lawful detention is. The court has to determine whether kind of a detention or imprisonment is lawful or not. Please mind the words habeas corpus. What does it mean exactly? It literally means produce the body. This is all academic discussion, but now let us turn to practical approach for approaching the High Court in a writ jurisdiction. From family court or from any other subordinate court, how you will be in a position to approach the Honorable High Court in a writ jurisdiction. There are many special courts, and you are aware about the legal position, about the formation of special court like family courts, special courts under Atrocities Act, Labor Court, Industrial Court, and so many. There are also regular courts from where you are unable to challenge the interlocutory orders before appellate or revisional courts. Therefore, you need to keep it in mind the term that there is no efficacious or effective remedy to challenge the action of the court or the authority. If you draft the petition, in the last paras of the writ petition, you have to write, there is no other efficacious remedy available to you. And as there is no effective remedy available to you, you are approaching before the High Court in writ jurisdiction. To challenge an action of the court or authority, you must be sure about that there is no alternate remedy available to you. If you are practicing in criminal courts, you are aware of section 374, 377, 378, 397 read with 401 of Criminal Procedure Code. If you are practicing exclusively in civil court, then you know the limitations of section 96, 100 or 115 of the Civil Procedure Code. And if at all you want to practice or you are practicing in a writ jurisdiction, you must be aware of the limitations or the prescriptions of Article 14, 19, 21, 22, 226 and 227 of the Constitution of India. When you are invoking writ jurisdiction, first caution, please mind well, first caution, check, do you have any alternative remedy before filing a writ petition, which can be exhausted for redressal of your grievance or your client's grievance. Second caution, are you concerned with fundamental rights or violation of legal rights, wherein you may come to the High Court directly in the writ jurisdiction? You have to check that. Third caution, are you challenging administrative action? Administrative action, like there are some advocates practicing before SRA or dealing with externment orders, dealing with detention orders, dealing with eviction of a person from public property or acquisition, and so many others. If it is so, then you have to mind well that you have only approach to the High Court via writ jurisdiction. Fourth caution, are you challenging the judgment of the lower court? If yes, have you exhausted all the remedies of appeals and revision which are prescribed by code, either criminal or civil code? Fifth caution, are there any disputed questions of fact involved in the matter? Now, this is very relevant because the court or High Court may not exercise its power if the issues involved disputed question of fact. Now, what are the disputed questions of fact? Disputed question means the facts which require verification by evidence. Keep it in mind, writs proceed only on the basis of admitted facts and or non-performance of the duties by the executor. If it relates to disputed question of fact, because for example, I would say that one person say I have right to a particular property, and another person say no, he has no right to a particular property, it becomes a disputed question of fact who is a rightful owner of that particular property. It has to be decided by the court of law by examining, by scrutinizing the evidence. These are some of the precautions you must take before filing a writ petition. One more aspect, presently today is not a drafting class. I am not taking any drafting class. But it is just an advice. If you feel like, you may take it, otherwise leave it. When you draft a writ petition, I have seen so many writ petitions drafted by so many advocates. When you draft writ petition, you have to keep it in mind that the first paragraph of your writ petition comes out or speaks about what kind of a relief you are seeking from the High Court. Many people start the first paragraph with the sentence, the petitioner is peace-loving and law-abiding citizen of India. We know that you are law-abiding citizen of India, no doubt about it. And you are law-abiding, therefore you are before the court. So the court knows that you are law-abiding citizen. But the court would be more happy to know that why you are before the High Court in writ jurisdiction. And it's a very simple to explain to the court in a very first para, in very short sentence. Like you can say that this petition concerns a violation of legal rights of the petitioner as he is deprived of so and so and so and so, whatever you want to say. It need not be a thesis, but you can say in one para or one sentence, he is deprived of his rights because of a particular action of the administrative agency or by any other forum which you are challenging before the court. Whatever. Another aspect, very important, please verify. Because of the present scenario of various petitions, please verify who is the petitioner. It's very important. What is his or her local standing to file such petition? There are some court birds who come very regularly to the court as if they know the law better than advocates. And they may try to tell you that this is the remedy available to you. So you have to understand their understanding of law, their case, what they want to plead before the court, and that what kind of relief they are seeking. Sometimes, like a PIL, sometimes the petition comes for just a publicity. Sometimes people file some petition for their own benefits, to take out the benefits. It's a fact, and it's happening in the courts nowadays. Don't land yourself in a hot and sour soup. You may be delicious, but it's a soup which makes you difficult to survive. And if the court finds that this is a kind of a petition you have filed, which is vexatious or frivolous, the court may impose a very, very heavy cost on you. PIL or public interest litigation, which attracts young advocates to come in a limelight. No doubt, if someone do a very good job, he should be known by the people that he is fighting for a cause of the society. Social cause, fundamental rights, environment, ecological balance, death sentence, challenging the integrity of the judge, and there are many subjects in which you may approach the court. But really, with a folded hands, I'm trying to tell you this. Check the facts before filing the writ petition, because once you enter the court and once you argue the case in a writ jurisdiction, it is between you means you're a petitioner, and the court to deal with the facts and averments which you have made in the writ petition. We are not here to test the knowledge of somebody. We are discussing the practical approach for writ jurisdiction. There are inherent powers and powers of superintendence of the High Court. In inherent powers, like I earlier said, the court may issue appropriate writs, calling for records, correcting the records, and even under the powers of superintendence, the High Court may monitor the working of the subordinate courts judicially as well as administratively. The High Court may very well consider whether the court is exercising the jurisdiction vested in it in a correct legal manner or not. It's a vast jurisdiction. As I said earlier, the court may grant any relief under the sky if at all you make out a good case for your client or for your petitioner. This takes me to the issue of writ of habeas corpus. And I'm seriously discussing this with you, my friends, because writ of habeas corpus is misunderstood by many persons. Many persons means many a times it is being used for the purpose of one doesn't know. Some advocates do advise to their client. I have seen many cases from the family court when it's a petition concerns the custody of the child. The High Court of Bombay, at least, is having a very strict view about it. As I said, the writ of habeas corpus. What does it really mean? It says, where is the body? Produce the body. Now, when you are trying to consider this kind of a writ in family law, then you have to take care of the facts of your case. Your child is either with the mother or with the father, maximum with the grandparents. But would you call it unlawful detention? For whatever reasons, the child is in custody of those persons. They feel that they are taking care of a young child. But whether it is a habeas corpus, whether any other writ is available to you, whether any other remedy is available to you for having a custody of a child, the issue is very serious. It is whether you have to place before the court whether such person is in unlawful detention of a person. It is not husband is settling score with the wife or wife is settling score with the husband. And for such settling of the score, writ of habeas corpus is definitely not available. But yes, in some rarest of rare cases, the High Court has exercised jurisdiction where nobody was aware of whereabouts of the child. These are very serious cases. I'm sure everybody will take care of such a situation and understand the writs when approaching the High Court for whatever writs you are asking for. Writ jurisdiction, as I said earlier, it's a very extraordinary jurisdiction. We need to use this jurisdiction with care and caution. It is not necessary for you to advise your client to file a writ in every matter. But you may have to approach to protect your client's right as well as the human agony. Writs, though a wide jurisdiction, leave aside the family court. There are so many other courts, civil courts, criminal courts, revenue courts, which people tend to approach the High Court directly, and they realize the fact that if the petition is dismissed, without going into the merits, you lose all the avenues and remedies available to your client, which you would have otherwise taken advantage of. Therefore, I am time and again trying to tell my young friends that if you want to file the writ petition, check your facts very well. The law keeps on developing. The Supreme Court and the High Court are going to interpret law time and again. They are going to change their views, revise their views, come out with their views in a different language, in a different on a different merits, on a different facts. But let us not forget that the writ jurisdiction, which is provided by our Constitution is a very, very important document. It is the best document of protection of human dignity. And it gives you the remedy, which is extraordinary remedy by way of writ petitions. You are in a profession. Normally, I say it in my lecture of the professional conduct and etiquettes, but I can't resist to take this opportunity to tell all of my young friends, please, you being an advocate, you have special status in the society. You need to follow true spirit of civilized democratic society. And therefore, you need to maintain dignity of your special status. And I'm sure while dealing with the writ jurisdiction, you will be the conscious of this very fact and deal with the situations and cases which come to you. In fact, I would appreciate if at all I have a more interaction with you than I've been going on delivering a lecture and lecture and lecture. Thank you for bearing with me. And may I now request Shraddha or whoever are the organizers to forward your questions if you have any queries. Thank you very much.